Hello again, fellow orchid lovers. It's Danielle here with a video on how I grow my Phalaenopsis in water culture. So with this video, I'm just basically going to show you, I do grow my orchids, my Phalaenopsis orchids in full water culture, which basically means that the roots are exposed to water all week long. I know that some people do semi-water culture with their Phalaenopsis and they do have success with that. But I find in my environment it's just a little too dry for that because I do have forced hot air heat, and therefore it's just a little too dry. There's not enough humidity in my home, and I noticed that my orchids don't really like that. So here's just a small selection of my Phalaenopsis orchids to share with you. Some of my newer orchids that are doing well, some of my newer orchids that are doing very poorly, some of my older orchids that are doing well. So I'm just going to kind of go through them and explain why I have the water levels where I do, and we'll go from there. So this Phalaenopsis I've had for quite some time now. She decided to extend her flower spike. All her flowers fell off, and then she started pushing out more. You know, the tip of the spike started extending and she pushed out more flowers. So she has one more bud to go, which is just starting to crack open. So we should have that one soon. Her root system was pretty good, which is rare, I find, for orchids that I buy. But it wasn't bad. I mean, you can see some of them are a little dried and not so keen looking. And then there were a few that I had to take the velamen off of. But for the most part, she had a pretty healthy root system. So as you can see here, I can keep the level pretty low on her. And although the rest of, the green stops at some point, she is being hydrated. Her flowers are healthy. Her leaves aren't desiccating. They're nice and firm and healthy and a little bit dusty. Okay, next task after I make this video. So she's doing well. So I keep the water level thereabouts. For her, I can raise it or lower it a little bit, and she seems happy and content. But as you can see, most of the root system is in the air because the orchids' roots need airflow. If you don't give them the proper amount of airflow and you give them too much water, you are going to suffocate the roots. So you need to make sure that you're keeping that in mind. Some people that do semi-water culture, when they do have their orchid roots in water, they have a tendency to put it a little bit higher because it's only in water for 2 days, and then the rest of the time it's exposed, all the roots are exposed to air. For myself, because I do full water culture on these, I do keep the water level a little lower because their roots, the bottom of their roots are exposed to water all week. And once a week, I rinse the roots and they get fresh water. And this water is fertilized, always fertilized. This is one of my oldest orchids. It is not my oldest, but it's one of my oldest. And I mean, I just wanted to share this with you because it's a testament, if I can get it to show, of, I'm realizing I'm spinning the glass and the orchid's not moving. It kind of shows how happy they are in water. I mean, look at that. The bottom of that root is branching. The bottom of that root is getting a growing tip. As soon as it hit the water, it started to get a growing tip on it. So they do like water culture, despite what some people may tell you. So just wanted to share that with you. This is one of my newer orchids. These are actually both my newer orchids. And as you can see, I'm barely giving them any water. It's not really that much. It's less than, I would say maybe a little bit less than an inch of water in the bottom of each of these vases. And as you can see, even though there's only an inch of water, the roots are green all the way up to the base of the plant. So although it's only exposed to a tiny bit of water, the entire root is hydrated. So like I mentioned in my video about the finer rooted orchids, having that water in the vase provides humidity to the rest of the plant. And it doesn't need a really high level of water in order for the entire root to turn green and be hydrated. Now, if I did put the water level higher, less of the root would be able to get oxygen. So you might run into some root rot problems. Plus, this root would get so saturated it would probably start to rot. And it may even start rotting the base of the plant and keep it too wet. So that, that's the case with both of these new orchids. They only have a little bit of water, but the roots are green all the way up to the base of the plant. So we don't need really high levels to keep our plants hydrated. This one is, I wanted to share this with you because the older roots are kind of woody and I don't feel they're really hydrating the plant very well, but she didn't have any new roots until recently. She started to develop new roots. And you can see only half of the root is green, but she's very healthy. So even though the roots are not green all the way up to the base of the plant, she is still getting proper hydration. She's growing a new leaf there, and the leaves are very firm. You'll know when your plant is not, when your Phalaenopsis is not getting enough water. I mean, look at these orchids over here. This orchid is not getting enough water. We know this orchid. This is the one that has no roots, practically. I mean, look at that. Lost all her, she's finally pushing roots, but she lost all of her roots. So this is a dehydrated Phalaenopsis. That's what a dehydrated Phalaenopsis looks like. This is not a dehydrated Phalaenopsis. So even though the root all the way up to the base is not green, she is still receiving proper hydration. So again, your plants are going to tell you if they're happy or not. If these leaves start to go limp and start to wrinkle, that's your sign that you need to make an adjustment. This is my elegant Karen Aloha. She has a ton of new roots. None of them are quite reaching the water yet, but I do keep my water levels a little higher on her. She branched. Her roots have started to branch. So she likes a little bit more water and a little bit more humidity than some of my other phals. But that works for her. It doesn't work for all of them. This is my Harlequin orchid that lost all of her roots. You can see she's finally starting to grow roots back again. And the only root of hers that I have down in the water is this one, because these other ones aren't quite long enough yet. You can see the tip of her stem is there. I don't want to keep her stem in water, and so just one root is in the water, and yet she is still hydrating properly. Again, firm leaves, no wrinkles. She's pushing out a new leaf. If she was dehydrated, she would start to wrinkle and get, the leaves would start to droop. So I know that that one root in the water is all she needs at this time. And these roots are growing quick, so it's only a matter of maybe another week or so before some more are going to join that root in the water. This is one of my older orchids, one of the first Phalaenopsis I got when I started growing in water culture. Put out more flowers for me. So we have another 3 buds to go. Tiny little flowers, but very enjoyable. Beautiful, beautiful blooms. And, that's the amount of water she's in. The roots do hydrate all the way up to the stem, but she's not having a problem with stem rot or root rot or anything like that, and she's growing more roots. So some orchids, they can be green all the way up to the stem, and they're fine. And then other orchids, the green's only going to go halfway up, and they're going to be fine. So, you just have to kind of tweak for each Phalaenopsis, what the level of water is that they can tolerate or what the level of water is that they're going to take. And again, if you're growing in semi-hydro, you may find that for the 2 days they're soaking, you're going to put the water a little higher. Not semi-hydro, semi-water culture. It's been a long day already, and it's only 12 o'clock. Yeah, so you may find if you're growing in semi-water culture that since you're only going to be soaking it for 2 days, you're going to put the water a little bit higher. But for me, because I grow in full water culture, which is every day of the week, these roots are in water, I just watered this orchid. So this level is the highest it's going to get. And in a couple of days, it's going to drop. And then a week later, it's going to be here. And then I'm going to take all the water out. I'm going to clean the roots, put fresh water in, and the cycle continues. And eventually, again, those roots are going to come down into the water. Now, this is one of my newer orchids that's throwing a fit. She is unhappy. I just got this orchid and her spike is starting to die. So that's the first indicator to me that something's wrong. Actually, the first indicator to me that something was wrong was that these buds got stuck, not opened. So they started to open and then they stopped, they stalled. And then looking at her foliage, you're gonna see this wrinkling? And if you could feel this, it's soft and leathery. This one's starting to get soft and leathery. This is a sign that this orchid is not happy. She is not doing well. Now, if you'll remember, this is the new orchid that I got that had terrible roots. And I don't think it's going to come through well on the video, but I can tell by just looking at those roots that they are rotting. They look green, they look healthy, but they're going slightly opaque. So sometimes you'll get a Phalaenopsis and the roots are white, and that's not a problem. It just means they haven't photosynthesized. But with these roots, see how they're not really green anymore? They're kind of going a brownish color, and they're getting opaque. That, to me, is an indication that these roots are rotting. So this orchid is going to turn into this. I know it. I know it right now. She's going to be a rescue mission. That spike's going to come off soon. Her leaves are all going to droop. Her roots are all going to rot. And that's just where she's going to go. And it's just, I have no control over what happened to her before I got her. So she's clearly been through some rough stuff. And she's going to lose her roots. And she's going to lose her spike. And I'm going to have a couple of months of this ahead of me. But it is possible to rescue an orchid like this from the brink. If you've been following me for a while, you know I had an orchid that did this, and now she's putting out a flower spike, and she's healthy, and she's got leaves and roots, and she's great. So you don't scare me. I'm going to rescue you despite yourself. So you can see here, this is an orchid that's in bad shape. She's dehydrated, but she's finally putting out her roots. I do have, some microfiber there to try to hydrate some of her newer roots that can't quite reach the water, to give her some extra hydration. She is pushing some out. It's slow going. She doesn't have very much energy, this poor plant. So I'm trying to be patient, but this plant's crazy. She pushed out a flower spike. Well, it's in there. See that purple bump right there? As she was going in her downward spiral, she decided to try to push a flower spike. So that has since stalled, but now she's finally starting to push out roots, and she thinks it's time to push a leaf. Incredible. Crazy, crazy, crazy girl. So she's got to slow her roll and just concentrate on roots, but she doesn't seem to want to listen to me. So she's staying in this state a little bit longer than some of my others have, but I know I can pull her through. I've pulled through others in this state. The Harlequin was in that state, so I'm not really worried about it. But yeah, so that's how I grow my orchids in water culture. My Phalaenopsis orchids in water culture. They are in water all the time, full water culture. And it's really, I spoke to someone recently about this, it's really actually hydroponics. Bare-rooted hydroponics is what I'm doing with my Phalaenopsis orchids. And again, some people choose to do semi water culture with them, but I choose to keep them in water all the time. And that's because of my environment. My environment is extremely dry, so I find that they need that little microclimate of humidity in order for them to be healthy. They do seem to benefit from it. So I've noticed that they seem to know it's spring and things are starting to take off. Unhealthy orchids are starting to get leaves. So I can't wait to see what they're going to do for me this spring. I've really... the older orchids that I have, I've kind of knocked them about a bit, and I've learned from them, but I've kind of put the poor things through some really tough times. So I have some smaller leaves, some signs of, but I mean, this leaf, then came this leaf, which is slightly bigger, so we're going in the right direction. I did learn my lesson with a lot of these, so they are hopefully through this growing season going to have some nice growth, and we're going to move past my mistakes. But if you have any questions, let me know. And I also would like to post a video about my cattleyas and how I grow them in water culture, because it is a little different than the way other people do. And I'll explain that in that video. So I hope you all are continuing to have a nice day, and I will talk to you next time.